Thank you all for joining our second year of the online high school class that we do. Now, today being the first class, I wanted to go over what is it that we can explore here. Because again, this does not replace your Sunday Balvihar class. This is simply a supplement for those that want more. So naturally, those that want more will be less than the ones who naturally go to Balvihar. Just because at the high school stage, it's hard to make time for it. Interest also wanes in something spiritual at that point. So it's always important that we try to make time for something like this. So last year, what did we do? We went through and we explored various aspects of Hindu culture. What does it mean to us to really explore it? What does it mean to practice certain parts of it? How do we apply, most importantly, this knowledge in our own daily lives? So, through a series of workshops, discussions, we went through all of this. Now, my goal this year is to take it one step further, where what you learn in Balvihar, if what we do in this session is simply a repetition of that, doesn't really serve a purpose. We could go through just any text like Bhagavad Gita and glean what we want from there and do workshops, but I want to take it further in that we have deeper discussions about how to really be Hindu. Especially since when you're on the precipice of going to college soon, our intent and goal as the Balvihar organization is to really help you carry this with you throughout your life. Now, if you don't even carry it with you into college, that means something is wrong in how we're doing things. So a fair amount we'll be hearing from you all, trying to see what is it that matters to you and how can we facilitate understanding if you have questions on things, everything like that. So what we'll do today is we'll go through a series of questions that I've come up with. Just basic questions, and once I go through those, you can select which questions you want to discuss, and you'll be able to go into the breakout rooms and talk about it there. Okay? Let's begin then. So, first thing is welcome. Awesome to have you in the session. Now, one ground rule is we all have to have our cameras on the whole time, just for safety reasons and to make sure that we're actually here and present, not just virtually logged in to the room. That's one part of it. And second thing is feel free to ask questions. Those parts of the class like this, when I'm simply lecturing, this will be placed on YouTube for others to see as well. But the time when it's Q&A, questions that you ask or things in the breakout room, none of that will be recorded or posted anywhere. So you can be rest assured that whatever you ask in here, though it's a virtual setting, it stays here just with me and the people here. Doesn't go anywhere else besides that. So with that welcome, then the first question is, what brings you here? Is it that your parents saw the flyer and said, oh, I have to have my kid do this, and now you're sadly finding yourself here not just for 1 hour Balvihar a week, but 2 hours? Is it that you felt some questions I want answered, therefore being here in this session? Or is it simply just a curiosity? You don't really know what brought you here, but I just want to see what it is. Just trying it out, testing the waters, see if I really want to do this. Now, I'll tell you why I'm here. I have a full load of classes that I take every week, close to 14 classes per week. And I was really insistent on adding this class this past 2 years. Simply because one is a selfish reason, is that I, as a brahmachari, there are many groups of people within our congregation that I have access to learn from and to work with. Unfortunately, Balvihar isn't one of those points anymore. I see students at lock-ins, I see students in assemblies and things like this, really getting to hear what you guys are going through. How can I, as a brahmachari, better serve your age group? That seemed to be missing. Because you're in your Balvihar classes, during that time, I'm doing the parent satsangs. So I thought, why not create an opportunity where even if it's a limited number of students based on extracurricular restrictions and all those things, can I still set something up where I can learn from these students and really have an opportunity to share with them? So that's why I'm setting this up. Second reason is look at how our CHYK program grows, right? Chinmaya Yuva Kendra is meant for college students and young professionals. Around this nation, All of our mission centers put together, we graduate around 1,000 students per year. At your major centers like your Dallases and Houstons, you'll have close to like 50 or 60 kids graduating every year. Smaller centers than that, you have about a healthy number like 20 to 30. Even smaller, maybe 5 to 10 every year. All put together from all, 54 and counting centers we have in the country, a good round conservative estimate is about 1,000 students. Now, out of those 1,000 students, how many of them become Chinmaya Yuva Kendra members in college? I would peg it at less than 100. And I'm not talking about fully committed members that are there for every session. Even making that foray into exploring what CHYK is, less than 100. Now, this is not a criticism of our high school students. It's a way for us to reflect as leadership in the mission and say, what do we need to do differently? What do we need to do to make sure students have a positive experience in high school, understand the value of why they need this knowledge and exposure to it in their lives so that they continue in college? Where for us, it's not a numbers game. That's not the point here. Not saying we have to pump up these numbers. That's not it. It's how do we gain more accessibility to students, especially when we have 1,000 who are graduating in our program every year, 1,000 12th graders. What is it we can do to retain these students? Because also what I see is when I counsel college kids, the stressors nowadays are super high. Expectations that we set on ourselves or from others in our lives are sky high as well. Naturally, it's not easy to navigate. And the irony is that which we let go of, the spiritual heritage and knowledge, that's what can help us the most in trying to navigate life's challenges. But unfortunately, this seems to be something that we don't hold in high regard, either because it wasn't taught to us in a way that we can value it, or we just feel like we've outgrown it, or whatever reason it is. That's why this class is so open, I feel, with questions. If you don't believe in Bhagavan, you can openly say it here. Just be ready to work with me and listen to what I have to say about that, but you're open to question anything. Now, when you may not have that comfort in the Balvihar setting, this is a setting that I want to build that comfort in. Because if we can't get those questions answered, how do we go on later and do something? How do we stay in that Hindu sphere? How do we make sure this knowledge applies to our lives? So in a nutshell, that's why I'm here, to help facilitate that. And I know Wednesday nights may not work every time, but I want to make it a kind of a structure where I come up with various topics that we discuss every week. So even if you miss a couple classes, you don't feel like you're behind. It's not like we're going through a text or you miss something and then you're out of luck, you don't understand what's going on. Every class is pretty much existing separately in what we're doing. I want to do that intentionally so that there will be some continuity, but you won't feel like you're behind just because you miss a few classes. But with that, I ask that you please try to attend as much as possible. And even if you miss it, please do check it out on YouTube sometime during the week, just so you're still plugged in. At least you can get the lecture portion of it, if not the conversation part. So what are some things I want to explore today? First is to understand, where are we as a generation? For many of us, our parents moved here from Bharat maybe more than a decade ago or so. Now, given that, they didn't come here with plenty of money and every resource available. They had to work super hard to make what they have. Which is why in our Indian culture, Indian American culture, us specifically here, this idea of hard work, of persevering despite all odds, of placing a value and premium on the power of education, the power of really understanding what one's talents are, we place this in very high regard. In our generation, and don't make fun of me when I say our generation, just let me have that at least, even though I'm double your age. It makes me feel good when I can say our generation here. So our generation, we've greatly benefited from this kind of mindset. Now, one thing I often hear from parents, however, is that their generation was that last great generation of hard work in this country when it comes to Indian Hindu Americans. They say our kids were born silver spoons in their mouth. They work hard and get good grades in school, but besides that, that whole survival instinct is missing. They're greatly pampered. So our kids may not achieve as much as we did. Now, the counter to that is the evidence that there are so many people who are successful that were born and raised here to Indian Hindu families. But what we have to ask ourselves is, another thing that made that previous generation so great is, despite living thousands of miles from their homeland, they still retain their cultural religious values. They placed a huge premium on that. Whether it's involvement in Chinmaya mission, patronizing various temples in the area, donating to Hindu causes to build what we have in this country today, they took that very seriously. Because when you're away from something that we usually take for granted, like this culture, being so far away, they said our children need this, because unlike us, they're not going to get it simply through osmosis. Now that we have the opportunity, especially in the larger cities here in America, especially in places with a Chinmaya Mission Center and Balvihar program, to really understand what this knowledge system is and to bask in these values, to hold on to. Are we going to integrate Hinduism into our lives going forward? And the honest truth is, I'm not seeing as much of that from our generation. Part of it could be we have a language barrier, that we speak, think, do everything in English. What we do in Chinmaya Mission is teaching in English, but the language connection builds a stronger connection to scripture and to bhajans and to all these other ways of connecting. One thing we see is in art forms. How many of you, with the raise of a hand, have participated in whether it's Hindustani or Carnatic music or dance or art or some form of a Hindu art form? And notice I'm not just saying Indian art form, Hindu art form very specifically. Almost everyone here. That's not surprising. That's awesome. And given that those of you that raised your hands, you live in larger cities, you have the luxury of having access to teachers that teach this, facilities and institutions that really promote this kind of learning. We're lucky to have that. Now, just by doing that, is it for the purpose of simply being performative and getting attention for it? Or is it something I'm doing as an art form to really enhance my connection with my Hindu culture? Because one of my pet peeves when I go to these dance performances, the MC will say, the student is performing her Arangetram. It's her graduation from dance. That's my biggest pet peeve. Arangetram means debut performance, not graduation. It's not a culmination in that art form where you leave it behind, you say, I'm done with it. That is that first performance after you've learned enough and the guru feels you're ready to perform, after which you make a deeper foray into this art form. And our Hindu art forms are not merely performative. That's not the point of it. It is a deeper connection with that Bhagavan. All these art forms serve that purpose. When you're dancing and reenacting those stories from our Puranas, Itihasas. When you're singing that glory of that Bhagavan. When you participate in making art, whether it's sculpting, painting in some way, it usually is culturally significant because it has some Hindu history relevance to it. All of these art forms are meant to build that Hindu connection even more. The previous generation gave us access to it. Are we using this access to build that connection more through our art forms, or is it something that's simply hobby-based and performative-based? That's something we have to ask ourselves. Another question to ask: how Hindu do we want to be? There are two ways to look at this. There is that internal Hinduism that we have, of conviction, faith, belief in what this knowledge is, a genuine love and regard for Bhagavan and all which is represented by that tattva or essence. There is that externality of Hinduism as well, of how comfortable am I publicly being that Hindu? Will I wear something on my forehead when I'm out and about, even in school? Am I willing, when I'm on my own at university, willing to take up the task of going to temples on significant holidays and religious festivals, mahotsavas and utsavas? Am I willing to go with friends to a Hindu organization on campus, actively engage in satsanga and different things? Am I willing to organize these things as well to ensure that I can be a part of them? Help lead others in how we observe these things. How Hindu do we actually want to be? Is it even important to have to publicly express it? Can I just say, I want to have my altar at my home, do my puja, do my japa, my own sadhana, and go to maybe satsang quietly? I don't want to have to be performative about my Hinduism. That's not important to me. What is our idea of how Hindu one should be, or what does that even mean? Which directly leads to, then, another dichotomy we can look at. There is an aspect of knowing Hinduism versus doing Hinduism. Knowing Hinduism refers to what are those principles that this religion is based on. That idea we find in our scriptures, the culmination of being a sadhaka or a seeker is this knowledge, irrefutably known intuitively, that my nature is sat, the nature of existence, chit, the nature of consciousness, ananda, the nature of unmitigated bliss. That is my identity. Nothing else can be my identity. Not this body, not this mind, not this intellect, not this name, not this form in any way. Nothing else can be that identity. That is the highest knowledge to have. To facilitate that knowledge, a value system is needed. A good understanding of Bhagavan is needed in order to make that connection with my favorite form of Bhagavan. Plus, a healthy reverence for the Guru Parampara is needed to really take this knowledge in. Now, that's knowing Hinduism. Where does doing Hinduism apply? What are those actual routines and actions that I do that reflect this knowledge in my life? I can say I have love for Bhagavan. That's awesome. What am I doing to really make that a part of my routine? Is there a sadhana practice that I do? I can say I love living these values. Yet, what does that mean from doing in a Hindu standpoint? There's dhanam, giving in charity. There's tapas, restricting myself when I feel I need more self-control. All of these are the doing aspect. Now, one reason why, even despite having a Balvihar education, why wide majority of our 1,000 student graduates a year don't come back to a Hindu way of living through Yuva Kendra is because that doing was missing from their lives, even in Balvihar. The knowledge was there. Understanding how vasanas are impressions in my psyche, understanding this idea of what moksha is, understanding the ideal of how my intellect should be guiding my mind, all of this is known, and that's awesome. But without a doing, how is this religion kept relevant to me in my daily life? Look at the history of Bharatavarsha. Bharata faced 1,100 years of oppression by hostile forces. Islamic invaders, Christian invaders coming in, plundering, looting, converting, killing, destroying places of worship. This is not for a decade or two, guys. 1,100 years, that's more than a millennium. Yet, this religion still persists. The oldest religion in the world, the original religion in the world, no doubt about that, still persists despite all of that abject persecution. How? It wasn't simply the knowledge that kept it alive. It was the doing of Hinduism. Okay, you're going to break down all 400,000 temples in our country. We will turn every home into a temple. Every home will have a shrine with a murti of Bhagavan that is ardently worshipped. You'll get rid of our libraries. Okay, we have an oral tradition then. From teacher to student to teacher to student, this knowledge is passed down as an oral history. So that unbroken, it goes from generation to generation. You've stamped out Hinduism in certain areas of the country. Other areas of the country have various festivals that they celebrate where these venture out to other parts of Bharata as pilgrimages. So even if the religion is stamped out in our village or area, we can go on a Tirtha Yatra to somewhere that is holy to still observe our religion the right way. Doing is what kept this religion alive. Lack of doing will make this religion disappear. Simply knowing all of these things in the abstract philosophy, which seems abstract to us because there's no doing associated with it. How much am I doing in Hinduism? How much more am I willing to do, even at an age where everything is busy for me? That's the true mark of what my commitment is. How much can I fit in as a Hindu? We're a minority religion in this country. Is it that I'm ostracized for being a Hindu? Is it that I feel I have to curtail how I conduct myself as a Hindu simply so I can fit in or for a better job opportunity or a good club membership or something like that? Do I have to kind of tamp down my Hindu-ness? I'll admit, when I go on a plane, for example, if it's a longer flight or I just don't feel comfortable in a climate, like in the people's climate, I won't wear a dhoti, I'll wear pants and I'll go. People question and say, why? You're a brahmachari, shouldn't you dress a certain way? I have to look out for my own self-preservation. I travel alone. For my own protection, maybe it's a good idea sometimes, instead of the dhoti, to wear the pants. That's a decision I have to make. I wish I didn't have to, but I've seen enough in the world to where, no, that is something I have to think about sometimes. Not for the sake of I'm not ashamed of what I wear and what I am. Safety comes first, though, doesn't it? A hard decision to make, but one I have to make sometimes. Now, you'll find that in your own lives as well. How much do we fit in? Fitting in is one thing while still trying to retain some aspects of our culture. What do I see a lot from high schoolers, though? We'll mispronounce each other's names because that's how white people say it at school. And even when I'm at the mission, I'll see Avni, I'll be like, hey, Avni, what's up? And I'll refer to as Avni to other people. Why? Why am I changing so much into glorifying mistakes of how my culture is practiced just because the dominant culture in this country does things that way? We find ourselves doing that. Is that a sign of being ashamed of our own religion? Is it a sign of wanting to fit in so badly that doing things the right way even seems like too much? That's something we can explore together in a judgment-free way. Final question to look at: is Hindu-ness Indian-ness? Without a doubt, Bharata, India, is the birthplace and the very nexus of Hindu culture. The roots lie there, and we're here with the branches and the leaves and everything extending. Yet, even when I was growing up, when people would ask, are you Indian? I'd say, my parents are Indian, I'm American, since I was born here in Texas. Visiting India during holidays, I never felt truly like I was from there. The way I speak is different, my food preferences are different, my thinking patterns are different, experiences are different. Did I feel purely American growing up? Not really. My home life is different. The way I look is different from a lot of people. You find yourself in a no man's land. And now, with this generation, with more of us here, it's a bit more comfortable. But you talk about growing up 20 years ago or even 40 years ago, things are a lot different. It's not the same. That leads to a lot of lack of pride in religion as well in culture. Not having a language exposure to the homeland, everything. Now, do I try to actively separate that Hindu-ness from Indian-ness then? Saying that the religion is one thing, that Indian culture is something else. Or do I see them as inseparable? One is a synonym for the other. Hindu culture is Indian culture. What are the pros and cons of each of these sides of belief? So do you see these kinds of questions are not those things we always discuss in Balavihar? Am I right? This is what matters when do we stay Hindu or not. A typical Balvihar class has its purpose, teaching us what this knowledge is, rudimentary understanding of adopting a sadhana lifestyle. All of this is important, no doubt. Going deeper into these questions that are unique to a generation or an upbringing or where we find ourselves, that has to be done in some kind of space. And if Balvihar is not the exact appropriate space for that, let this class be the space where we explore these things. And if there are changes that must be made to our thinking of how we practice at an institutional level, of how we as brahmacharyas and swamins serve you to make this possible, let this be the place where we come out with those ideas. So this class in essence serves as a place for your growth, my growth in how I work with high school students, our growth in the mission of what are things we need to address institutionally, our growth as Hindus. How do we retain this culture for this next generation as well, and how it's practiced? So again, let me give you a minute to go through the questions again. And then you tell me, what would you like to discuss in the breakout rooms? Okay? So, why are you here? I think that's one that would be nice to discuss. You can choose 2 or 3 of these to discuss. This would be one that I'd really like for us to talk about. Talking about, is that the glorious generation, one of our parents, when it comes to exposure to this Hindu culture, or can that still continue or be revived? How Hindu do we want to be? So it's a 2-part question then. What does it mean to be Hindu? How Hindu do you want to be? There's a lot to unpack in this. How do I balance knowing Hinduism and doing Hinduism? Notice I didn't say versus doing Hinduism, not versus, and doing Hinduism. Both are necessary. They're not mutually exclusive. Which one takes precedence at which time? In what instances? How much can I fit in as a Hindu? Directly because we're growing up here in the United States, is there a need to fit in? To what extent, given my Hindu background? Is Hindu-ness Indian-ness? Why or why not? Now, I wish I could have given you easy questions, but that's not what this class is about. They will be tough. So in the chat, for everyone, you can put in 2 questions, say. What do you want to discuss? And we'll see. What will we discuss in our breakout rooms? And please do turn your cameras on if you don't have them on. So take a minute, post in the chat what you'd like to talk about. We've got 3 so far, waiting on 1, 2, 3 more. Sai, Siri, Yash, and Nagasai waiting on you. 2 questions you'd like to discuss. And while we're waiting, with a show of your fingers, how many in each breakout room? Is it a 1 or a 2? 2, okay. They put up a 1. That's a solo. All right. 2 questions then that we'll discuss. Question number 1, why are you here? Okay. That'll be the first one. Why are you here? Second question is, how Hindu do you want to be? Okay. Question number 1, why are you here? Second question, how Hindu do you want to be? And it's okay if we do not agree on everything in here. The point is not to always agree, it's to have a good discussion and learn from each other. So if you disagree, be civil and polite about it, but explain what your viewpoint is. The more honest we are, the more we learn from each other. Okay? When it comes to the two questions, then, why are we here and how Hindu do we want to be? In your breakout rooms, discussions mostly centered around those external displays of what it means to show Hinduism. I mean, there's a Hindu doing, there's a Hindu knowing. Showing is also part of it. How comfortable am I representing what Hinduism is? That'll be a healthy part of our discussions going forward as well. So, in all of this, understand that there are so many different angles to come at each question that we ask. That's what makes this so fun. I kept the questions open-ended enough where there's various answers. At the same time, I tried to keep these questions on track enough so we talk about the Hindu sphere and what it means to be Hindu and all of that. So as we go forward, we'll touch on different texts. I'll do a few movie workshops. We'll have interesting things going on. Spread the word to your friends in Balvihar. Tell them it's a fun thing to do. Get them to come. Because I know it's an hour long on a Wednesday night, but this will pay dividends in that you'll uncover things that we don't usually talk about in Balvihar. I think that's the function and purpose that this class serves. Because if this is exactly what we do in Balvihar, there's no point to doing this, right? It's just a burden on you, just repetition. It's something different, something new, making us think in ways that we haven't thought of, and a great way for me to really be plugged into the high school setting so I can understand what can I do to serve you guys better in your age group. So with that, happy Navaratri to everybody. Thank you so much for joining our first session. See you next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Time. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Thank you. Hari Om.